The Caucasus Mountains are an enormous mountain range that runs 750 miles in between the Black and Caspian Seas. The highest peak of the mountains stretches approximately 3.5 miles into the sky, which has made this mountain range a historical superior fortification for many nations over the course of history. In the 18th century, white supremacists named people of European descent after the Caucasus Mountains because they believed this is where life originated at, and that white people were the most beautiful people on the face of the earth. Everyone else that had more pigmentation was classified as ugly and degenerate variations of the human species. Eventually, these ideas were denounced after they were proven to be pseudoscience. However, these mindsets are still heavily facilitated in Western culture by the classification of white people as Caucasians, when in reality, there literally is no such thing as a Caucasian. The regions surrounding the Caucasus Mountains have been inhabited by multi-ethnic tribes and nations over time, like the Iranian nations we spoke about in the last episode. But anyways, these mountains are where the term Caucasian comes from, and this region plays a significant role in the history of the Khazars and their wars with the Arabs. Darband, a region we discussed in the last episode, is a territory located directly northeast of the Caucasus Mountains. This region was formerly a part of the Sassanid Empire. This is where the Sassanian king, Qubad, built a sophisticated fortress to stop the tribes north of the Caucasus from raiding Sassanian territories. But by 641 AD, Darband was now controlled by the Khazars. Darband was strategically located in the narrowest part of the Caucasus Mountains, and control of this fortification was the determining factor in whether someone may or may not advance past these mountains. In 632 AD, the Prophet Muhammad died, and in that same year, the Rashidun Caliphate was established. This was the first caliphate after the death of Muhammad, and Abu Bakr was elected as the first caliph. 2 years later in 634 AD, Abu Bakr died and was succeeded by Umar. Umar extended the Rashidun Caliphate across much of the Byzantine Empire and most of former Sassanian territories. In 641 AD, Arab armies under the banner of Islam began operating in the neighborhoods south of the Caucasus Mountains. Umar, the ruler of the Rashidun Caliphate, enlisted Abd al-Rahman as commander over the northern campaigns, with specific instructions to advance north against the Khazars. Sometime in 642 AD, the Arabs arrived at the doorstep of Darband and occupied it. This occupation would mark the beginning of the Arab and Khazar wars that would last for about a century. When the Arabs under Abd al-Rahman arrived at the border of Darband, they met there a Persian governor who asked them where they were going. Abd al-Rahman responded to the Persian governor and said, "To Ballinger." Ballinger was the nearest town after entering into the southern territory of the Khazars. The Persian governor tried to dissuade the Muslims, but with no prevail. The determination of the Arab armies to invade Khazaria was revealed in Abd al-Rahman's response to the governor. "The Arabs are not content with that, and by heaven, we have people with us who have entered into this affair with all of their heart. They were men of honor and scruple in the time of ignorance, and are so now more than before. They will not change nor cease to conquer till they are defeated and changed by their conquerors." With this being said, the Arabs advanced into Khazaria and attacked Ballinger. Tabari is the 9th century Arab historian where the source for this account comes from. He is also the one who we spoke about in the last episode that traced the Khazars back to Japheth. Other sources concerning this history are scant, but we do know that Muslim armies repeatedly attacked Ballinger, but they were repelled by the Khazars every time. Sources say that during these wars, both parties used catapults and siege machines. One account tells us that while the Muslim general tried to rally his troops, a voice was heard saying, "Courage, men of Abd al-Rahman, your rendezvous is paradise." Unfortunately, the Muslim commander, Abd al-Rahman, was killed, prompting the Arabs to retreat. 4,000 Muslims were killed, and survivors recall hearing cries of Allah Akbar, which means God is greatest. Many Arabs continued to fight, while many fled south to Darband and back across the Caucasus Mountains. There was a period of peace between the Arabs and the Khazars for at least the next 30 years. In the meantime, the Khazars expanded west into the Ukraine and the Crimea, while the Islamic Caliphate continued to grow and conquer much of the known world. Although there was peace between the Arabs and the Khazars, there was not peace within the Islamic State. After 5 years of civil war and turmoil, the Rashidun Caliphate was overthrown in 661 AD, and the Umayyad Caliphate was established. While the Rashidun Caliphate was the first caliphate after the death of Muhammad, the Umayyad Caliphate was the first actual Muslim dynasty, and it lasted until about 750 AD, when they were defeated by the Abbasids. The establishment of the Umayyad dynasty resulted in a military effective state that was centered in Syria, something the Khazars would soon have to deal with. In 682 AD, the Khazars took the offensive and attacked Albania, south of the Caucasus Mountains. This region was dominated by Christianity and religiously subject under Byzantine authority. The results of the mission are unknown, but later that year, an Albanian bishop went north and preached Christianity to the Khazar armies. If the Albanians could get the Khazars to convert to Christianity, then they wouldn't have to worry about being attacked by the Turkic warriors any longer. How much of an effect the bishop had on the Khazar armies is unknown, but what was noted was all the heathen shrines the Khazars dedicated to their supreme god, Tengri Khan. The priests of the Khazars' native religion, who were called shamans, were burned to death and all the shrines were cut down, or at least this is what the sources claim. This is a subject we will touch on more shortly, but it gives us a glimpse of the religious practices of the Khazars before their conversion to Judaism, and how attempts to convert them to Christianity had taken place. We will now take a break from the Khazar Wars and jump into another alliance the Khazars built with the Eastern Roman Empire during this same period. In 685 AD, Justinian II became East Roman Emperor at the age of 16. He was intoxicated with foolish pride, a strong passion, and he lacked right ruling. After 10 years of intolerable misrule, in 695 AD, Justinian's nose and tongue were amputated, and he was banished to the city of Cherson in the Crimea, which is in the Crimea of present-day Ukraine. Due to the Crimea's geographical isolated location, the Byzantines used this area to send exiles who angered or rebelled against the Byzantine government, sort of like a prison. During his time in Cherson, Justinian continued plotting to regain his throne. After 3 years, he saw an opportunity when, back in Byzantium, Leonidas, the same emperor who overthrew Justinian, was now dethroned himself and had his nose cut off also. Justinian escaped from Cherson and fled into the Khazar-ruled town of Douros in the Crimea. Here he had a meeting with the Khagan of the Khazars, whose name was King Busir. Busir formed an alliance with Justinian and gave him his sister Theodora in marriage. Justinian, with his Khazar wife and their followers, moved 190 miles east to the region of present-day Taman. This region was also governed by a Khazarian governor. Here, Justinian and his wife Theodora gathered a Khazar army and prepared for the invasion into Byzantium. Unfortunately, back in the Eastern Roman Empire, there arose a new emperor, whose name was Tiberius III, and he was informed of the alliance between former Byzantine Emperor Justinian and the Khazars. Tiberius met with Khagan Busir and persuaded him to betray his brother-in-law Justinian and offered him a rich reward in gold if he delivered Justinian dead or alive to the Byzantines. King Busir agreed and gave orders to 2 of his henchmen to assassinate his brother-in-law. But Theodora, Justinian's Khazar wife, caught wind of the plot and warned her husband. So Justinian invited 2 of the henchmen separately to his quarters and strangled them. He then escaped across the Black Sea into the Danube estuary and made a new alliance with the powerful Bulgar tribe under their king, Turbulus. The Bulgar king Turbulus proved to be more loyal to Justinian than the Khazars were. In 704 AD, the Bulgar king offered Justinian 15,000 horsemen to attack Constantinople. The Byzantines already feared Justinian and were aware of what he was capable of, and evidently he was not going to stop until he regained his throne. So out of fear, the Byzantines swiftly overthrew their current emperor, Tiberius, and reinstated Justinian on the throne. Justinian's second reign from 704 to 711 AD was even worse than the first. He became mentally unstable and obsessed with hatred against the inhabitants of Cherson, where he had spent most of his bitter years in exile. He sent an expedition against the inhabitants of the town, whose leading citizens were burned alive, others drowned, and many others imprisoned. However, this did not quench Justinian's lust for revenge. He sent a second expedition against the town to destroy it, but a Khazar army intervened. Justinian's actions prompted one of his own representatives in the Crimea, whose name was Bardanus, to defect to the Khazars and request their help. The Byzantine army renounced its allegiance to Justinian and elected Bardanus under the name Philippicus as the new emperor. When the Khazar reinforced Byzantine army returned to Constantinople, Justinian and his sons were assassinated, and Philippicus, or Bardanus, was greeted as a liberator and installed on the throne. This story proves to us the influence the Khazars had over the fate of the Eastern Roman Empire. Simply put, the Khazars built an alliance with the former Roman Emperor Justinian II through his marriage to a Khazar wife. But they also played a role in overthrowing the emperor and installing a new emperor on the throne. These events took place in 711 AD. We will now rewind a few years and return to the Khazar Wars with the Arabs, which also took place around this same period. In 685 AD, the Khazars moved south again and attacked Georgia, Armenia, and Albania. These territories were part of the Umayyad Caliphate. The campaign was victorious as the Khazars laid waste to countries, collected prisoners, and withdrew back north. In between 707 and 713 AD, the Muslim armies moved north and conquered the territories of Azerbaijan and Darband. Control of Darband fluctuated between the Khazar and Arab armies during these wars, but 4 years later in 717 AD, the Khazars invaded Azerbaijan and killed several Muslims. The Umayyad Caliphate responded by sending a commander by the name of Hatim ibn ad-Numan against the Khazars, who inflicted a total defeat against the Turks as he returned to the Caliphate with 50 Khazar prisoners. In 722 AD, things seemed to escalate when the Khazars attacked the Alans, an Iranian group of people who were known for dwelling south of the Khazars. We discussed them in the last episode when we reviewed the Iranian heritage of this region. The next year in 723 AD, an Arab army under Ubayd ad-Nadhani met the Khazars in Armenia, where a great battle was fought. The Khazars, who are said to have numbered 30,000, gained a victory against the Muslims. This series of battles between the Arabs and the Khazars followed the same repetitive pattern, with the Khazars moving south of the Caucasus Mountains, invading Arab lands, while the Umayyads countered by moving north, inflicting heavy damage on the Turks. The leader of the Khazar armies during these campaigns was Barjik. Sources state that he was the son of the Khagan. During one of the battles in 731 AD, the Arabs advanced north past Darband and even got as far as Samander. Arab accounts tell us that some Khazars resisted by burning themselves to death rather than surrendering to Islam. This account illuminates the intensity of the battles and the determination of the Khazars to remain independent. Barjik, the ruler of the Khazars during this period, died at an unknown date, but his successor was Bihar. Bihar took the Khazar Empire to new heights around 732 AD by creating an alliance with the Byzantine Empire. Khagan Bihar had a daughter named Zitzak, whom he married to the Roman Emperor Constantine V. After the Khazar woman was married and baptized, she was given the Greek name Irene. Her and Constantine V had a son named Leo IV the Khazar. Leo the Khazar succeeded his father Constantine V as Byzantine emperor. Leo the Khazar would later go on to run military campaigns against the Abbasid Caliphate, and in 780 AD he died of tuberculosis. He was succeeded by his son Constantine VI at the age of 9. Constantine was the second Khazar ruler to reign on the Byzantine throne. These events magnify the role the Khazars played in European history. With two Khazar emperors reigning on the throne of the Eastern Roman Empire, the partnership between the Khazars and Rome had been sealed. The last Arab campaign in 737 was led by the future Caliph Marwan II, who was the last Caliph of the Umayyad dynasty. The battle ended in a Pyrrhic victory, meaning a victory that was not worth it because of how much a toll it took on the Arab armies. The Arabs under Caliph Marwan II sent envoys to the Khazars and informed them of plans they had to attack the Alans. But this was just a cover-up, as the Arabs had actually planned to surprise attack the Khazars. The Arab armies mustered an army of at least 150,000 and attacked the Khazars from two different directions, the Dariel Pass and Darband. The Khazar army was unable to recover from this shocking ambush and retreated as far as the Volga. The Khagan was now forced to ask for terms, as Caliph Marwan gave him two options: Islam or the sword. The Khagan agreed to convert to Islam, but he requested that he may still be able to eat certain foods that were not permitted in Islam. But the Arabs reassured that under no circumstances would they permit the consumption of certain unclean foods. So the Khagan complied and accepted Islam. But it must have been an act of lip service, because no more in historical records do we ever hear of this conversion to Islam again. The Arabs may have won the last battle against the Khazars, but by this time the momentum of the Holy Wars had already reached an inflection point, and the Arab invaders retraced their steps across the Caucasus Mountains without having gained a permanent foothold or installing a puppet ruler in the north. Even though the Khazars suffered a defeat in this battle, they became more powerful than they previously were, as their number of tribes subject to them increased and their influence over the region grew stronger. Although some brief skirmishes between the two groups took place after this history, the Arab invasions across the Caucasus came to a halt during this period. What's important to realize from this story is the influence the Khazars had on the Byzantine Empire. The Arabs had been violently spreading Islam across the known world, giving their subjects two options: Allah or the sword. Whoever didn't convert was slaughtered. But the determined Muslims were not able to fully conquer the Khazar warriors. During these wars, many attempts were made to convert the Khazars to either Christianity or Islam. Although, according to Arab sources, the Khazars did agree to convert to Islam, a few years later in 744 AD, the nomadic Turks converted to Judaism. I hope to see you in the next episode, where we will analyze the controversial conversion of the Khazars to Judaism. And thanks for watching.